Good evening, I'm David Kramer with Alaska Weather. As always, please visit our website, weather.gov/Alaska, get any updates to the forecast, or check out any watches, warnings, or advisories that we might have out for your area. You can also call our weather info line, 1-800-472-0391. Get any updates to the forecast for that means as well. And feel free to email me at the address at the bottom of the screen, david.kramer@noaa.gov. Starting off, we do have quite a few warnings, advisories, and a couple watches as well out for the state, so we're going to cover quite a few of these. Starting off with a winter storm warning for the Juneau area. This is 3 to 7 inches of snow. You can see on the map that it's going to vary a little bit depending on your location. Some areas seen as high as 6 to 8 inches. We're also going to have some winds associated with this system, 35 miles per hour. This is going to be in effect from 6 p.m. on Wednesday until 6 a.m. on Thursday. Moving up a little bit to the north, Yakutat and Haines winter weather advisories out for both of these locations. Again, this is primarily for snow. Going to see generally 3 to 5 inches, varying once again depending on your exact location. And some winds through there as well. Wind gusts up to 35 miles per hour. This is going to be in effect until 6 a.m. on Thursday. Taking a look out over southwest Alaska, we do have 2 winter weather advisories out. These are both for blowing snow, expecting to see visibility reduced to a half mile or less at times, with winds gusting up to as high as 45 miles per hour, a little bit higher around the Bristol Bay area in the Alaska Peninsula. Up north by the Kuskokwim Delta, we're seeing this blowing snow condition is going to be in effect from 6 a.m. on Thursday to 3 p.m. on Thursday. And then down by Bristol Bay in the Alaska Peninsula, we are going to see that blowing snow advisory out 3 p.m. Thursday until 12 a.m. on Friday. So now we'll cover some of the rest of the advisories and warnings that we have out for this state. We'll stay out in southwest Alaska in the Yukon Delta area, where we do have a blizzard warning that is going to be in effect midnight tonight until noon on Thursday. Moving further to the east in the Anchorage area, as well as up by Palmer and Wasilla, we do have some winter weather advisories out for snow for those locations. For the Anchorage area, that's going to be in effect until noon on Thursday. And then up in the areas of the valley east of Wasilla, we're going to see that winter weather advisory for snow out until 9 a.m. on Thursday. Moving more to the east, we have a blizzard watch out for the Thompson Pass area. That is going to be in effect from Thursday evening to Friday afternoon. We already talked about much of the northern portions of the Panhandle. Now we'll move on to the watches that we do have out for the southern Panhandle. These are going to be winter storm watches for snow. We're going to see 4 to 6 inches in most locations. However, as we get closer to height, we're expecting higher snow amounts. Could get up to 8 to 12 inches there. And these are all going to be in effect from Thursday evening to Friday morning. Moving into northern locations of the state, starting up by Kaktovik, where we have another blizzard warning in effect until 6 p.m. on Thursday. Much of the northern interior is going to see primarily wind chills, especially through the Brooks Range. But as we get into the central and southeast interior, we are expecting to see winter weather advisories for snow and blowing snow conditions. And those are going to be in effect, they're going to be expiring mostly from the west to the east. So some of the western ones are going to last into Thursday. But as we get farther to the east, the latest ones that we have are going to expire on 6 a.m. on Friday. Quite a few of these out. If you do have questions about your specific area or want specific details for the products out for your area, please visit the website weather.gov/Alaska. Taking a look at our satellite imagery, we have quite a few low pressure systems moving through the area. A couple lows up in the northern portion of the Bering Sea progressing to the east, going to start to bring some of that snow to the southwest coastline. A weaker low, as we watch this again, south of the Central Aleutian Islands, not going to be a big factor for our area as it is starting to track farther to the south. And then we have another system out over the Gulf of Alaska that's spreading that cloud cover out through much of mainland Alaska, especially those central and eastern areas of the mainland. As we watch this one more time, we can see a front moving with that low pressure system out over the Gulf of Alaska towards the Panhandle area, helping to bring more of that snow to the Panhandle. So as we look at our weather for the remainder of the day, we can stay with that low out over the Gulf. Its front moving through the eastern portions of the Gulf of Alaska, bringing some precipitation, especially for today, to the northern locations of the Panhandle, where we are seeing primarily snow. We're also going to see some snow throughout much of south central Alaska and some areas of blowing snow as we get up through the Alaska Range and into the interior. We're going to see more snow throughout the central and eastern portions of mainland Alaska, extending up to the Arctic coastline, where we will have that snow and blowing snow conditions out by Kaktovik. As we move down into the Bering Sea and Aleutians, we are going to have quite a few snow showers throughout the area. However, we do have some areas of high pressure trying to nose into the central Aleutians area, helping to clear out some of the precipitation. As we move into tonight, that high pressure moves in over the central Aleutians, but is also going to create some fog underneath the high pressure. For the rest of the Bering Sea and Aleutians, we are going to see continued snow showers. That's going to push into the southwest coastline tonight with that low out over the northern Bering Sea. Out over the northwest coastline, however, area high pressure is keeping much of the precipitation farther to the east, where we will see snow throughout the central and eastern portions of mainland Alaska, extending from the Arctic coastline down through south central Alaska, where we do have the low near Prince William Sound, and the front pushing in to the eastern portions of the Bering Sea closer towards the Panhandle, bringing continued precipitation to the Panhandle, with some of the most low-lying areas and areas out by the Gulf starting to mix that snow with some rain. As we move into Thursday, more snow for the Panhandle area, with low pressure continuing to sit out over the northern portions of the Gulf of Alaska. That snow is going to extend through much of south central Alaska, with more blowing snow conditions through the Alaska Range and southeastern interior, as well as more snow up through the rest of the eastern portions of the mainland, extending up to the Arctic coastline. High pressure remaining over the northwest coast, keeping precipitation farther to the east. And our low that was out over the northern portion of the Bering Sea is now over southwest Alaska, bringing some snow to areas for the southwest, with some of those areas of blowing snow as well. High pressure that was over the central Aleutians is continuing to track farther to the east, allowing for a little respite from the snow for the central and eastern Aleutians, but another front is coming in as that high pressure moves out of the way, bringing more snow and winds to the western Aleutian Islands. Finally, as we move into Friday, that new front is going to push into the central Bering and Aleutians, allowing some snow behind it, but a warm air push is going to bring some rain to the central Aleutian Islands, and ahead of this system we are expecting some snow for the central Bering. Then out over mainland Alaska, high pressure is going to dominate on Friday, allowing for quite a bit of clear skies from much of the mainland. However, along the northwest coastline, extending down towards the Bering Strait and St. Lawrence Island area, we are expecting some snow and blowing snow conditions. Then down in the Gulf of Alaska, low pressure is going to bring more precipitation to the Panhandle area, primarily snow in northern locations and higher elevations, but also some areas mixing with rain as we get closer towards the Gulf. For our low temperatures for Thursday morning in the Panhandle area, primarily in the 30s, in the 20s for areas around Lynn Canal. For south central Alaska, a lot of interior locations in the teens to single digits, however near to the 20s as we get closer towards the Gulf waters. Up in the interior, most locations going to stay below zero, but as we get by Delta Junction and Northway, we are going to stay a little bit above in the single digits. Through the Brooks Range, we are going to drop down to the minus 20s, and much of the Arctic coastline in the minus 20s as well, a little bit warmer by Kaktovik. Minus teens down much of the west coast. Savunga, however, going to be minus 8. Then down in southwest Alaska, most locations going to be below zero, and then starting to get up into the 20s for the Panhandle, or for the Alaska Peninsula rather, and into the mid-20s for the Aleutian Islands until we get out by Shimia, 31 degrees expected there, and 22 for the Pribilof Islands. Thursday afternoon highs, we're looking into the mid to upper 30s for the Panhandle area. Getting near 20 for much of south central Alaska, a little bit warmer as we get closer towards the Gulf waters, 27 at Kodiak. Up in the interior, we are going to see temperatures above zero for much of the eastern locations, as well as places near to McGrath. Below zero for those highs for much of the northern portions, as well as out west, and then up through the Arctic coastline, staying below zero as well in the minus teens at most locations. Minus single digits for the Seward Peninsula, but getting above zero for much of southwest Alaska, into the teens in many locations nearest to the water. Above freezing for the Alaska Peninsula and Aleutian Islands, getting warmer as we get farther to the west. Friday morning lows out in the Panhandle area, dropping down to below freezing for most locations, colder as we get farther to the north. Out over south central Alaska, some of the interior locations are going to drop down below zero, but most locations should stay at least in the single digits. Up in the interior portions of the state, all locations dropping below zero, with areas such as Anaktuvuk Pass dropping down to minus 32, coldest in the state for Friday morning, minus 20s along much of the Arctic coastline, and staying below zero along the west coast as well. St. Lawrence Island a little bit warmer. Down in southwest Alaska, most locations going to be below zero, in the 20s for the Alaska Peninsula, and near freezing for the Aleutian Islands and Pribilofs. Friday afternoon highs in the southeast area get up to near 40 in southern locations, mid-30s up to the north, in the teens for much of south central Alaska. In the interior, going to be right around zero for most locations. However, as we get more to the north and west, going to be staying below zero. Below zero for much of the Arctic coastline. However, the west coast is going to be in single positive digits. And then down in southwest Alaska, we are expecting temperatures to be near 10 degrees, getting warmer as we get closer towards the water. Above freezing as we get into the Aleutian Islands and into the mid to upper 30s as we get farther to the west with 35 for St. Paul.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
I'm meteorologist Peter Chan from the National Weather Service in Anchorage. Here's your flying weather for Thursday. Thursday morning, we're going to see a band of IFR conditions from just south of the Alaska Range to the east side of Prince William Sound, extending up to about Yakutat. And then in the far northeast, along the Brooks Range and up toward the northeast Arctic coast. Otherwise, larger areas of MVFR surround these IFR, with much of the Bering Sea under MVFR conditions. By Thursday afternoon, still some pockets of IFR, one of them hanging down there in the Ketchikan-Dixon entrance area. Also, the eastern side of the Alaska Range, and then along the eastern part of the Arctic coast, as well as the southwest Alaska there, including the Alaska Peninsula and around Bristol Bay. Further west, also IFR conditions showing up in the far western Aleutians. And as we head into Friday, still some stubborn IFR holding down there around Ketchikan in the southeast. And then some east and northeast portions of the Alaska interior will continue to hang on to some IFR conditions. And more importantly, out to the west, expanding IFR conditions across the western Aleutians in response to a frontal system. They'll be the next weather maker to approach the mainland for the weekend. By Friday afternoon, you'll see a band of IFR conditions from the central Bering Sea into the eastern Aleutians. So past conditions on Thursday, Anaktuvuk is looking IFR becoming MVFR. Improvement. So will Adigan go from IFR to MVFR. Further south and west, Lake Clark and Merrill will see MVFR conditions become VFR, as will both rainy and windy passes go from MVFR to VFR as that low pressure system works its way further east of Prince William Sound. Isabel, though, will go from MVFR to IFR. Mentasta, MVFR down to IFR. And Tanita should improve from IFR to MVFR during the day on Thursday. Portage, MVFR improving to VFR. And then finally in the southeast, Chilkoot and White passes should hold MVFR throughout Thursday. Freezing levels Thursday morning will be down along the southeast coast as well as the south central coast to just off of Kodiak Island, coming back across the eastern Aleutians up into the central Bering Sea. Some slightly higher freezing levels of 2, 4, and 6,000 feet off the British Columbia coast. Icing will be possible, especially above 4,000 feet across the southeast peninsula, above 2,000 feet in east central areas and the Yukon, and then back toward southwest Alaska above 4,000 feet, and out over the western Bering Sea and Aleutians above 3,000 feet. The upper level jet stream winds, we have a 125 knot jet core out over the Gulf of Alaska that is bringing in winds aloft at 30,000 feet of over 100 knots from the southwest into the southeast peninsula. On the west side of the state, 60 knot winds brushing the western shoreline from the northwest, and then also northwesterly winds continue down along the eastern Aleutian chain, anywhere from 70 upwards to 90 knots, and the far western Aleutians have 30,000 foot winds that are from the southwest at 110 knots. 9,000 foot level winds, low pressure circulation near Prince William Sound. Onshore flow from the southwest there across the southeast peninsula into British Columbia, southwest winds of 45 to 55 knots. On the backside of the low in southwest Alaska and Kodiak Island, winds of 45 upwards to 60 knots from the northwest. And the far western Aleutians are looking at southwesterly winds of 75 knots. Down to the 3,000 foot level, we have a couple areas of low pressure, the one working its way east of Prince William Sound, another little one coming into southwest Alaska, and strongest winds associated with that will be over Kodiak Island back into this Alaska Peninsula, anywhere from around 45 to 60 knots from the northwest. And then further west, you can see in the Aleutian chain, the western Aleutians are under south-southwest flow, anywhere from 55 to 70 knots. Taking a look at turbulence, the best chance for some turbulence will be across portions of the southeast peninsula below 6,000 feet. Also, we just showed you those stronger winds at the 3,000 foot level, so there will be some turbulence below 6,000 feet over the Alaska Peninsula. And then in the western Aleutian chain, we are looking for turbulence below 4,000 feet.
Space weather affects technologies. As conditions develop, we put out alerts, warnings, and watches to our customers so they can take action.
The Space Weather Prediction Center has had a long-standing relationship with the power industry, so they've been aware that solar storms, the geomagnetic storm piece of that, can affect the operation of their systems and induce extra currents and loads on those systems that can either trip those systems offline or in the worst of cases, cause damage. That relationship goes back for several decades. In fact, a big incident in 1989 where part of Quebec was tripped offline that affected something like 6 million customers for about 9 hours. I think that really raised the awareness in the power industries.
When we get the alert, we watch the grid and start looking for issues. Are we seeing a decline in voltage? Are we seeing equipment failures? And we readjust the system to try to mitigate those problems, try to keep the lights on and keep it from going out.
Averaging about 500, 550 kilometers per second.
If we didn't have this early warning, we wouldn't see it until our sensor saw it. Getting more information quicker and faster before the storm hits, not during the storm, is a big improvement.
In the long term, I think what we need and what we're moving toward, the U.S. as a whole, is better modeling, fully understanding this phenomenon, understanding how it would impact specific systems.
Rather than actually experiencing a storm, we can simulate storms in our software and see what the impact is. We try to get ahead of it. We always plan that if there's an outage, how can we keep the lights on? What's the best process to prevent it?
In the end, 5-10 years from now, there's going to be a whole mix of operational procedures driven by what we do on prediction and warning. And then there also will probably be some level of hardware controls to ensure the reliability of the grid.
Space weather affects technologies. As conditions develop, we put out alerts, warnings, and watches to our customers so they can take action.
There's different types of impacts on communication systems, and the HF we call the high frequency, which is that band of communications 3 to 30 megahertz. But it's a very important band of radio communication because it's used widespread. It's used, for example, by the airlines.
HF radio is most commonly used for position reporting when you're going across the ocean airspace, which is devoid of radar. And ATC can't see you, so it's up to you to report your position and your altitude and your speed.
HF works great most of the time, except during a big flare. And during a big flare, that HF communication capability could be gone within a minute or two. So as soon as we see something happening in there, or we see a flare, it's one of the first things we do is alert the aviation community, hey, big flare, HF's going to be impacted.
Once we know that there's an event going on, then the aviation industry and the airlines can react to that. They can alter their routes over the poles They can lower the altitudes that they're flying at, or maybe decide not to fly at all in the interest of the passenger safety.
So that's just one example of how HF is used, but the emergency response community will use it a lot too. It's one of their primary backups.
When you've lost connectivity between certain government agencies, it gives you that long-range coverage to talk from out-of-state to federal governments or from the FEMA locations to the state emergency operations centers.
So if we've got a big hurricane impact in the coastline, whatever big city, we've got the cell towers down and whatnot, we've got emergency communication folks in there. Those folks are very familiar with space weather and how it impacts their systems.
Here in recent years, it was used during Katrina when we had a lot of communications outages down there. It was also used during Hurricane Ike. There was an outage of the telephone circuits with the Texas State Emergency Office, so it was used in both those situations.
So when we talk about backup, especially for the airlines, typically they'll have SATCOM, so it'll be satellite communication.
The satellite technology that emergency responders use could be GPSs, could be satellite phones, satellite data terminals.
Space weather events can impact SATCOMs. The impact can range from a nuisance to loss of a spacecraft. So we will give them the heads up. If we have space weather events, flares, whatnot, they need to know what's impacting their systems. Situational awareness is key. Time is of essence to these folks. Again, it's life and death.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Welcome back to our show in the marine weather segment. Today's sea ice edge extends south through at least the northern portion of the Bering Sea and all the way down toward Bristol Bay, but notice some of the newly formed ice that's occurred along the edges there in the past few days as winds have not been as strong. We are, though, expecting some strong southeast to south winds that'll be pulling through the region on Friday that will tend to break up that newly formed ice and could also further open up some polynyas. So keep that in mind for some rapidly changing conditions here as we go through Friday and into Saturday. In the meantime, Thursday's marine weather forecast for the southeast shows south winds of 15 to 25 knots in the inner waterways from Ketchikan up toward Juneau with waves of 3 to 5 feet. Offshore waters will generally have a westerly component of 15 to 25 knots, waves around 9 to 14 feet, though stronger southwest winds west of Yakutat, producing waves of upwards to 15 to 17 feet. On Friday, winds turn a bit more northerly there in the northern portion of the inner waterways at 10 to 15 knots and waves around a few feet. Still onshore flow in the nearshore or in the open waters with waves running around 10, 11 feet. But from Yakutat off to the west, winds will be out of the east at 20 knots and waves around 10 feet. South central areas, strong winds occurring the mouth of Cook Inlet into between Kodiak Island and the Kenai. We are looking at west to northwest storm force winds of 50 knots and waves around 17 feet. Not as rough though, Prince William Sound northwesterly 30 knots, 6 footers, and off of the Kenai northwest winds 40 knots and waves around 15 feet. On Friday, at least the inner waterways, the flow is more northerly at 20 knots in Prince William Sound with 4 footers, but it continues to be 35 to 40 knots from the northwest at the mouth of Cook Inlet to just off of Kodiak Island there with waves running 8 to 11 feet. The Alaska Peninsula and Kodiak Island, winds around Kodiak Island west to northwest 35 to 40 knots, waves 10 to 14 feet in the open waters. On the Bering side, westerly winds of 35 knots, waves 8 to near 10 feet. On Friday, still northwest winds around 30, upwards to 45 knots around and south of Kodiak Island with waves running from 10 to 15 feet there. But winds turn north at 20 knots on the Bering side from Port Heiden down toward Cold Bay with waves of 6 to 8 feet. Through the Aleutians, a little reprieve, at least for a little while, northwest to west winds there through the eastern Aleutians with waves running 6 or 7 feet, but then southerly flow is really going to pick up west of Adak and Kiska and be increasing with waves upward to and a little above 20 feet around Kiska, building through the day on Friday as the frontal system works east. Southerly winds of 35 to 45 knots across the eastern Aleutians, with waves anywhere from 15 to around 20 feet. West of Adak, though, we'll have 45 to around storm force winds of 50 knots from the southwest and waves of 25 to near 30 feet. The west coast, south of the ice, we are looking for winds to be west to northwest at 30 to 35 knots. St. Paul and St. George Islands, and waves generally running around 8 to 12 feet in that area. And then winds are somewhat variable out over the ice west of Hooper Bay, southeasterly, but then northwesterly, at least north of Nunivak Island. And as we head into Friday, winds will begin to turn more to the southeast and south. The open waters, southeast to south winds 40 to 50 knots, waves building 15 to 25 feet, especially north of St. Paul. And then over the ice, look for southeasterly winds to be increasing to at least 30 knots throughout the day. On Thursday, along the Arctic coast, westerly winds 20 to 30 knots, Prudhoe Bay eastward. Southerly winds on the northwest coast from Kotzebue on up toward Point Lay, generally in the 10 to 15 knot range. And on Friday, we are looking for winds to try to become more southeasterly and picking up to 20 to 30 knots. So keep in mind the ice will be shifting there on Friday and into Saturday. And just a quick check that's on the surface maps. Low pressure over Prince William Sound will tend to be weakening with an occluded front impacting southeast Alaska. And then another weak area low pressure on Thursday affecting the southwest. So thank you for watching the Alaska TV Weather Show. You can find additional information online at weather.gov/Alaska.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.